Long COVID is a post-viral syndrome. What does that mean? A post-viral syndrome or post-infectious syndrome means that you are having symptoms after the acute infection. You are no longer contagious when you have symptoms of long COVID. It is the immune response to the virus that is causing those symptoms. So that leads us to problem number one with long COVID, and that is the immune response is both persistent and prolonged. There have been multiple studies now showing that there can be viral particles present in the gut, in exomes in blood, probably in other places, for up to 2 years after an acute COVID infection. That is not typical. And so if you mounted an immune response to this foreign invader on day one, you're still mounting an immune response to this foreign invader 2 years later if viral particles, RNA and protein, are still present. And this sets up a persistent inflammatory response or chronic inflammation. The second problem is coronavirus itself. Research into coronaviruses, some of the knowledge that was gained after the original SARS outbreak as well, taught us that coronaviruses are kind of sneaky when it comes to the immune response. They have a way of evading or tricking the immune response. And so the ultimate immune response is not typical. Normally, when you have a viral infection, your innate immune response, your first line of defense kicks in, and that ultimately will turn on the adaptive immune response. Coronaviruses tend to prolong this innate immune response in patients, and that leads to not only chronic inflammation, but a different type of chronic inflammation that is really a prolonged innate type immune response. Well, why is that a problem? Well, it turns out that the innate immune system in the body utilizes things like hydrogen peroxide and reactive oxygen species in neutralizing foreign invaders. Normally, as I mentioned, that would get turned off. In the case of COVID and coronaviruses in general, it seems that there is a prolonged innate immune response which results in very high levels of oxidative stress. This is not typical. Children, for example, should not be walking around with months and months of ongoing oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is what makes us age. Oxidative stress is what makes a heavy smoker look 20 years older than they are. And oxidative stress has been linked to neurodegenerative illnesses like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So oxidative stress is a problem, and it is profound in long COVID, perhaps unprecedented. There have been multiple studies showing that the oxidative stress with long COVID overwhelms the system's ability to deal with oxidative stress. Our body normally has about 15 genes of our 30 to 50,000 genes that are turned on in times of oxidative stress to neutralize this. In this case, even with all that redundancy, the oxidative stress overwhelms the system and is persistent, which is leading to many of the symptoms that have been associated with long COVID. This, in turn, leads to what I believe is the fourth problem, which is mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, you may remember from high school biology or college The mitochondria are organelles in every cell of the body. They're referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. They're where we make energy in the form of ATP. And those of us who care for kids with autism are very familiar with this concept. Kids with autism unequivocally and very well proven in the literature have issues with oxidative stress. And they also have issues with mitochondrial dysfunction as a result of that oxidative stress. Although mitochondrial dysfunction may not have been shown in articles addressing long COVID, if we are in a condition where oxidative stress is high, then mitochondrial dysfunction will follow. Oxidative stress poisons the mitochondria, and mitochondrial dysfunction is both a cause and a consequence of oxidative stress. So you see, in long COVID, chronic persistent inflammation that is innate in its character leads to profound oxidative stress that in turn leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. And in the situation of mitochondrial dysfunction, you have more oxidative stress. So we're in this vicious cycle of chronic inflammation and really organelle dysfunction in the body that leads to the symptoms of long COVID. And it's easy to see now, thinking about mitochondrial dysfunction as a part of this equation, why patients might complain of profound fatigue or brain fog or memory loss because they have mitochondrial dysfunction. So chronic inflammation, persistent inflammation, particularly of a specific type, kind of a prolonged innate immune response, leads to overwhelming oxidative stress. This in turn leads to mitochondrial dysfunction and the symptoms associated with long COVID. That is what I believe is happening with long COVID, and I think the literature supports that.